Good morning, friends, and welcome to yet another episode of Trans India Real People, Real Emotions. This week, we will be taking a look at commercial vehicle sales figures released by the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association. और साथ ही साथ हम बात करेंगे ड्राइवर्स शॉर्टेज की, एक ऐसा मुद्दा जो इंडस्ट्री को कई सालों से परेशान किया जा रहा है. It is interesting to know that shortage of drivers is not something that just bothers India, but is also a trouble all across Europe. We will be talking to the International Road Union to know more about driver shortage in Europe. But friends, before that, everyone is well aware of the difficulties that the road transport industry has been facing. Challenge सिर्फ सड़कों पर या हाईवेज पर ट्रक ड्राइवर्स के लिए नहीं है, लेकिन साथ ही साथ राइजिंग ऑपरेटिंग कॉस्ट, बढ़ते हुए खर्चे भी एक बहुत अहम मुद्दा है. हमें जानते हैं कि पिछले कुछ सालों में फ्यूल के प्राइसेस, डीजल के प्राइसेस किस हद तक बढ़ चुके हैं. एंड एड टू दैट द स्टीप इंक्रीज इन टोल टैक्स which is estimated to be anywhere between 6 to 8 rupees per kilometer for a truck. And then of course you have rising prices of trucks, tires, spare parts and whatnot. ड्राइवर शॉर्टेज इस इंडस्ट्री के लिए एक बहुत ही अहम मुद्दा रहा है कुछ सालों में. So while we are not addressing this issue seriously, we cannot brush it under the carpet for long. अपने एंड पर ट्रांसपोर्टर्स जितनी कोशिश कर सकते हैं वो कर रहे हैं कि ड्राइवर छोड़ के नहीं जाए, फिर चाहे उसे हायर सैलरीज देनी पड़े, पर्क्स देने पड़े, बेनिफिट्स देने पड़े और बहुत कुछ. बट दिस is a cost to the company and adds to the logistics cost as well. But it is very surprising that at the end of the day, these transporters, despite all the rising costs, indulge in a mindless freight war. हमें ये जानकर हैरानी होती है कि आज भी कई ऐसे ट्रांसपोर्टर हैं जिनको ऑपरेटिंग कॉस्ट ऑफ अ ट्रक, एक ऐसी चीज जो उनके फिंगर टिप्स पर होनी चाहिए, वो उन्हें बिल्कुल नहीं पता. Worst is when these transporters participate in reverse auctions. This is when the entire economics of road transport is crushed under the wheels and the only person smiling at the end of the day is the customer. लेकिन दोस्तों, सिनेरियो चाहे कोई भी हो, एक चीज जो आज के डेट में नहीं चेंज होने वाली है वो है द इम्पोर्टेंस एंड रेलिवेंस ऑफ रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट. आज भी मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द कार्गो इज मूव्ड बाय रोड, इज मूव्ड बाय ट्रक्स. और हालांकि रेलवेज बहुत कोशिश कर रही है कि वो रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट का शेयर जितना ज़्यादा ले सके, वो अब तक अलार्मिंग लेवल्स तक नहीं पहुंचा है. लेकिन हम ट्रांसपोर्टर्स से रिक्वेस्ट करेंगे दैट दे शुड नॉट बिकम कंप्लेसेंट, बिकॉज एक बार डेडिकेटेड फ्रेट कॉरिडोर तैयार हो गया तो काफ़ी ऐसे गुड्स हैं जो रेलवेज के पास चले जाएंगे. बट डिस्पाइट ऑल द चैलेंजेस, डिफिकल्टीज, श्रिंकिंग मार्जिन्स, ड्राइवर शॉर्टेज, राइजिंग कॉस्ट एंड वॉट नॉट, truck sales have been consistently rising for the last few months, a sure sign of recovery. Let's take a look at the retail sales figures of commercial vehicles as collated by the Federation of Automobile Dealers Association, also known as FADA. According to the release issued by FADA, November 2022 clocked highest sales in the history of Indian automobile industry, with March 20 as an exception when retails were higher due to BS4 to BS6 transition. On a year-on-year basis, total vehicle retail sales for the month of November 2022 saw a growth of 26%. All the categories closed in the green, and the growth rate was something like this: two-wheelers 24%, three-wheelers 80%, passenger vehicles 21%, tractors 57%, commercial vehicles 33%. When compared with November 2019, a pre-COVID month, total vehicle retail closed in marginal positive territory with an increase of 1.5%, except two-wheelers, which saw a marginal dip of 0.9%. All the other categories were in the green, with three-wheelers, passenger vehicles, tractors and commercial vehicles growing by 4%, 5%, 61% and 6% respectively. As far as the commercial vehicle segment is concerned, this is the breakup of various segments in November 2022. The LCV segment recorded a growth of 22.61% over last year, selling 46,386 vehicles. The MCV segment sold 4,776 vehicles, a growth of 11.59% over November last year. The HCV segment, however, recorded a huge growth of over 60%, selling 25,035 vehicles. Overall, the commercial vehicle segment recorded a growth of 32.8%, with sales touching 79,369 vehicles in November 2022 as compared to 49,737 vehicles in November 2021. Commenting on the growth in the commercial vehicle segment,
महिंद्रा ये गारंटी देते हैं कि उनका ब्लेजो एक्स सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज देता है, वरना कर दीजिए ट्रक वापस।
सॉरी अजय, महिंद्रा फ्यूरियो है। एक्शन।
महिंद्रा गारंटी देते हैं कि उनका फ्यूरियो सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज देता है, नहीं तो
एक्चुअली जयो, महिंद्रा जयो है, थोड़ा चेंज है। एंड एक्शन।
महिंद्रा ये गारंटी देते हैं कि उनका जियो सबसे चल क्या रहा है यहाँ पे?
मैम, ये चारों ट्रक ज्यादा माइलेज देते हैं, चारों।
तो ऐसा बोलो ना, ब्लेजो एक्स, फ्यूरियो, फ्यूरियो 7 और जयो। महिंद्रा के ये सभी ट्रक्स देते हैं सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज की गारंटी, नहीं तो कर दीजिए इन्हें वापस। महिंद्रा, देश की सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज देने वाली ट्रक रेंज।
FADA President Mr. Manish Raj Singhania said, the CV witnessed a growth of 33% year-on-year and 6% compared to 2019. With the government's continued focus in the infrastructure space and new mining projects, replacement demand continued to pour in along with healthy interstate passenger movement, enabling bus sales. Without doubt, there is a lot of buying activity in the road transport industry, and there are multiple reasons for the same. On one hand, we have the infrastructure growth, which is propelling growth of dumpers and tippers, and on the other hand, we have the replacement cycle of fleet owners who are replacing older trucks with new ones. However, what is really unfair is that the high prices of BS6 trucks have to compete with BS3 and BS4 trucks, which is really challenging. The government has been pushing the scrapping policy and has announced that all government vehicles older than 15 years will be scrapped with effect from April 2023. This also includes buses run by transport corporations. Friends, it is only a matter of time before this provision is extended to private trucks and buses. और दोस्तों, ये छोटे ट्रकर्स के लिए जिनके पास एक या दो ट्रक हैं जो 15 साल से पुराने हैं, उनके लिए एक बहुत बड़ा झटका हो सकता है। गवर्नमेंट कहते आ रही है कि जो लोग अपने पुराने ट्रक स्क्रैप करके नए ट्रक खरीदेंगे उनको बेनिफिट्स मिलेंगे, लेकिन ये बेनिफिट तब होगा जब वो न्यू ट्रक्स खरीदेंगे। बट फ्रॉम एन इंडस्ट्री पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू हमें ये बहुत मुश्किल लगता है कि एक छोटा ट्रकर जो अपने एक छोटी सी सीमा में अपना ट्रक चला रहा है, वो इस पोजीशन में होगा कि वो सबसे पहले नया ट्रक खरीदने के लिए पैसे जुटा सके और उसके बाद उस ट्रक के लिए काम ढूंढ सके। हमारी गवर्नमेंट से ये दरख्वास्त रहेगी कि इस स्क्रैपिंग पॉलिसी में अब भी इन छोटे ट्रकर्स की इंटरेस्ट को माइंड में रखते हुए कुछ ऐसी नीतियां निकालें ताकि छोटे ट्रकर्स अपना घर चला सके, इस व्यवसाय में रह सके। हमारी गवर्नमेंट से ये रिक्वेस्ट है कि वो उन्हें एक डिसेंट स्क्रैप वैल्यू दे अपने ट्रक का, और साथ ही साथ एक सेकेंड हैंड ट्रक खरीदने के लिए कुछ बेनिफिट्स दें। इसके साथ ही सेकेंड हैंड ट्रक खरीदने के लिए उनको सस्ते दाम पर लोन्स दें। दिस वुड कीप द स्मॉल ट्रकर्स इन बिजनेस and ensure that they have a livelihood to fall back upon. As far as the larger fleet owners are concerned, they will continue to reap the benefits of GST while buying new trucks, which makes them more competitive than those transporters who are still registered under RCM. The FCM advantage is quite significant to be ignored. While we do not see truck sales slowing down anytime soon, we hope that transporters start working on their operating cost. रोड ट्रांसपोर्ट इंडस्ट्री में तो कई एसोसिएशंस हैं, लेकिन बहुत ही कम गिने चुने ऐसे एसोसिएशन हैं जो अपने मेंबर्स के बीच एक अवेयरनेस क्रिएट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं फॉर ऑपरेटिंग कॉस्ट वर्सेस फ्रेट। हम ये जानते हैं कि एसोसिएशन मेंबर्स को डायरेक्टली ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि वो अपने फ्रेट रेट बढ़ाएं, लेकिन वो अपने मेंबर्स को डेफिनेटली एजुकेट कर सकते हैं और उन्हें बता सकते हैं कि आपका ऑपरेटिंग कॉस्ट ये है। पिछले कुछ हफ्तों में हमारे कई सीनियर ट्रांसपोर्टर्स से बात हुई है जो बिजनेस में 20 या 30 सालों से ज़्यादा हैं। While they are more than happy with the overall development in the industry, be it for trucks or IT or even roads, लेकिन उनका सबसे बड़ा पेन पॉइंट ये है कि साल भर साल प्रॉफिट मार्जिन्स कम होते जा रहे हैं और आज के डेट में बहुत ही ज़्यादा कम हो चुके हैं. They have seen a phase in the road transport industry when profit levels were as high as 50% or more. But now profitability is down to single digits. जाहिर सी बात है कि उनकी नींदें उड़ गई हैं. जिस आदमी को 50% प्रॉफिट की आदत हो वो आज 2, 3 या 5% पे काम कर रहा है. This definitely is disturbing. We can only urge transport associations across India to start conducting educational programs for their members, especially the younger transporters. कई साल पहले बॉम्बे गुड्स ट्रांसपोर्ट एसोसिएशन ने एक वेक कमेटी शुरू की थी जिसका लक्ष्य था यंग ट्रांसपोर्टर्स को ग्रूम करना, उन्हें एजुकेट करना. वेक कमेटी ने कई एक्सपर्ट्स को बुलाए, कई प्रोफेसर्स को बुलाए और लक्ष्य यही था कि जो यंग ट्रांसपोर्टर्स हैं उन्हें ग्रूम किया जाए, ना सिर्फ अपने बिजनेस के लिए but also to actively participate in the affairs of the association. मुझे आज भी याद है वेक कमेटी की जो मीटिंग्स थी जो BGTA के बोर्ड रूम में होती थी उसका शेड्यूल 2 घंटे का था, लेकिन ये मीटिंग्स कई बार 6-6, 8-8 घंटे चलती थी जहां पर यंगस्टर्स अपने आइडियाज़ एक्सचेंज करते थे, अपने थॉट्स एक्सचेंज करते थे. It is a result of that efforts that you see so many young transporters in BGTA's managing committee. The same trend needs to be replicated by other associations also.
महिंद्रा ये गारंटी देते हैं कि उनका ब्लेजो एक्स सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज देता है, वरना कर दीजिए ट्रक वापस.
सॉरी अजय, महिंद्रा फ्यूरियो है. एक्शन.
महिंद्रा गारंटी देते हैं कि उनका फ्यूरियो सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज देता है, नहीं तो
एक्चुअली जयो. महिंद्रा जयो है, थोड़ा चेंज है. एंड एक्शन.
महिंद्रा ये गारंटी देते हैं कि उनका जियो सबसे. चल क्या रहा है यहाँ पे?
मैम, ये चारों ट्रक ज्यादा माइलेज देते हैं, चारों.
तो ऐसा बोलो ना, ब्लेजो एक्स, फ्यूरियो, फ्यूरियो 7 और जयो. महिंद्रा के ये सभी ट्रक्स देते हैं सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज की गारंटी, नहीं तो कर दीजिए इन्हें वापस. महिंद्रा, देश की सबसे ज्यादा माइलेज देने वाली ट्रक रेंज.
Friends, coming back to the issue of shortage of drivers, this is a phenomenon that has impacted many other countries and not just India. In fact, Europe too has been struggling with driver shortage and they are anticipating the situation to only get worse. A new report by the International Road Union shows that truck, bus and coach driver shortages in Europe are spiraling out of control, fueled by increased transport demand and an aging driver population. The growing chance between retiring and new drivers is set to triple the rate of unfilled truck driver positions to over 60% by 2026 and increase by more than 5-fold for bus and coach drivers to almost 50% by 2026. The new report assesses 6 countries representing 2/3 of Europe's total road freight sector and 4 countries for passenger transport representing 28% of the total. Without action to make the driver profession more accessible and attractive, Europe could lack over 2 million drivers by 2026, impacting half of all freight movements and millions of passenger journeys. Despite driver salaries being up to 5 times higher than average minimum wages, the report outlines alarming data on difficulties in accessing the driver profession, especially for young people, and its attractiveness, especially for women. IIU Secretary General Mr. Umberto De Pretto said, Europe's driver shortage crisis is accelerating rapidly, posing a major threat to the continent if nothing is done. Trucks transport 75% of Europe's freight by volume and 85% of its perishable, high-value and medical goods such as vaccines and food. Bus and coach services, the most used collective transport mode in the EU, are central to Europe's decarbonization goals. Without drivers, Europe's economy, social mobility and climate plan will grind to a halt. But there are proven solutions, especially if industry and government work together, added Mr. De Pretto. Speaking about missing women and young people in the profession, he said, there is a low share of young drivers, 6% for freight and 5% for passenger transport, despite good driver wages and persistently high youth unemployment in many countries. Women also make up only a small percentage of truck drivers, despite significant levels of female unemployment in some countries. Spain, for example, has one of Europe's highest rates of female unemployment at 14%, yet one of the lowest shares of female truck drivers at 2%, in contrast to its female bus and coach drivers at 12%. Amongst various other solutions, IRU highlighted that public authorities also need to take action to prevent the shortage from escalating, and this includes the following: setting the minimum driving age at 18 years and starting training from the age of 17 itself, subsidizing license and training costs for new drivers, building more safe and secure parking areas. Friends, the following is an interview aired by France 24 channel. The channel spoke to Ms Raluca Marian, Director EU Advocacy and General Delegate, International Road Union. Ms Raluca speaks about the extent of shortage and how it is impacting various countries in Europe. We express our gratitude to France 24 for taking up the issue of driver shortage, and we are happy to repeat the same on our channel. Take a look at this interview.
The shortage of truck drivers is one of the major factors in this. It's a problem particularly in the United Kingdom at the moment, where many drivers are EU nationals. But what's the situation across the rest of Europe? Let's speak now to Raluca Marian from the IRU, an organisation representing the road transport sector. Raluca, thank you for being with us. Can you give us an idea of what is the situation in the European Union? Are there particular countries that are suffering more from shortages of drivers?
Driver shortage has been an issue in the EU for many years. Now with the corona, because the decrease in demand in some segments of the market, we were hopeful that this has been somehow improved. But unfortunately, we have run recently we have run a survey, and we could see that driver shortage is still a very, very important and increasing problem in the EU. Talking about countries particularly affected, and probably that's also logical, one of them is Ireland. And that's, of course, the effect and the neighborhood with the United Kingdom.
And what exactly does that mean then in countries like Ireland? If there's a particular shortage of truck drivers, who's being worst affected by that?
Sometimes, as you could see in the UK, because you mentioned the UK, you could see it on the shelves. Other times, there is not an immediate observation by the general public, let's say, but it's a factor which in time will be noticed. But of course, the most dramatic and immediate impact when there is this kind of especially if the shortage is all of a sudden, is of course the lack of products on the shelves and what is directly perceived by the consumer.
This isn't a new problem, as you said. It's been an issue of shortages for a long time. Why are we short of truck drivers?
Well, there are several factors for that. In the EU, I would like to list three of them. One of them is the restrictions and high costs of entering the profession. Another one would be the image of the profession, which is also very strictly connected with the conditions or working conditions for drivers.
So how do you address long-running issues like those?
Of course, we address them by looking at the causes and trying to address the causes and not only patching it here and there. As IRU, we have done also we have run a number of projects in order to address that. If we start with the conditions for drivers, we are talking about conditions like, for example, lack of parkings or safe and secure parkings. The press was full of attacks on drivers, especially in France in the recent months, but also simply the lack of parkings. Then there are also conditions like at the delivery place. So let's say not a nice treatment that drivers receive at loading and downloading places, and even the treatment by enforcers at the roadside checks. So as IRU, what we have done, for example, we co-signed with the unions on the EU level and with the Shippers Council. We have signed a charter for the treatment of drivers at the loading and downloading places. And then we brought this even at the international level and co-signed with the unions at the international level. And we also invited all corporates, shippers and transport operators to become partners to this charter and acknowledge the issue and try to solve it together.
Is money a major factor here? Is it just that we need to accept that we're going to have to pay more for goods because shipping goods is going to cost more money and because drivers need to be better paid? Is that the logic that you would follow?
I'm not so sure that it's about payment. When I talked about the image of the profession and the conditions, or working conditions for drivers, we don't have any specific evidence that simply their remuneration would be the immediate factor for being, let's say, not happy to embrace this profession or stay in this profession. I think the image of the profession, the conditions, the way they are treated, you've seen during the pandemic, the fact that they were the heroes of the pandemic, and paradoxically, they didn't have even access to the basic facilities on the motorways. So that gave a lot of publicity to the drivers, but did it help to the image of the profession? Would it cause a lot of drivers of potential drivers and young people especially to embrace this profession? So there are a lot of, we shouldn't underestimate any of this. And as I said, there is a pool of factors which contribute to the issue.
Should we be looking at trying to move some transport away from road to rail or, is there an alternative there to relieve pressure by taking long distance transport off the roads and onto other forms of transport?
Definitely, we should look at all options. And trying to create alternatives for road is something that the European Union, especially, and many countries, I guess, in other regions as well, they've been trying for years. But first of all, it seems that this is not an easy path. It doesn't happen so quickly. And in addition, even the European Union is forecasting a very, very important increase in demand. So creating additional rail or inland waterways, additional ways to transport, and increasing the capacity is needed and will help, but will not solve the issue.
Okay, Raluca Marian from the IRE, thank you very much for joining us.
दोस्तों, जैसा हम देख रहे हैं कि ड्राइवर शॉर्टेज दुनिया भर में एक प्रॉब्लम होते जा रहा है, एंड वी कैन ओनली होप कि इंडिया इसे सीरियसली ले और ये जो गैप है इसे भरने की कोशिश करे. कमर्शियल व्हीकल मैन्युफैक्चरर्स अपनी फैसिलिटीज़ बढ़ा रहे हैं, हम देख रहे हैं ट्रक के सेल्स बढ़ते जा रहे हैं, प्रोडक्शन बढ़ता जा रहा है. लेकिन अगर ड्राइवर शॉर्टेज एक ऐसे लेवल तक पहुंच गया तो ट्रांसपोर्टर्स के पास काम तो होगा, लेकिन उनके पास ड्राइवर्स नहीं होंगे, जिसकी वजह से ट्रक सेल्स भी हिट हो सकते हैं. वी वुड अर्ज द गवर्नमेंट and the transport industry and also the OEMs to address this issue and take necessary action collectively. Some of the key elements in attracting youngsters towards becoming drivers would include proper training, facilities on highways, and respectability to the profession, especially change in handling of drivers by authorities on the highways. दोस्तों, ड्राइवर की सैलरी आज की डेट में हम ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि कम है, लेकिन कुछ मुद्दे ऐसे हैं जिनको बहुत ही सीरियसली लेना होगा. सबसे पहले होगा ड्राइवर प्रोफेशन के लिए इज्जत. कॉमन पीपल और साथ ही साथ हाईवे पर जो अथॉरिटीज़ हैं उन्हें ड्राइवर्स के साथ बेहतर सलूक करना होगा. एंड ऑफ कोर्स हम ये चाहेंगे कि ड्राइवर्स के लिए हाईवे पर फैसिलिटीज़ हो जहां वो इत्मीनान से बिना अपने माल या ट्रक का सामान चोरी के डर के बगैर चैन से सो सके, चैन से आराम कर सके. वी ऑल नीड टू पुट इन अ कलेक्टिव एफर्ट to convert unemployment in the country to opportunities. We would wrap up this episode with a hope that driver shortage would be taken up on priority by all stakeholders. We will be back again next week with the Legend of Road Transport series featuring Guru Pratap Singh Gandhi from Bombay. Please do subscribe to the channel, and until next week, stay safe. Jai Hind.